So you guys know.
We are good to go.
Acreage, you can, and I'll say it's a total acreage minus the towns, minus the lake. So the,
Of the county.
it'll be a little different than
The
the
98.
800. I think it's
Oh, Lord.
95.
All right.
Appreciate your help on that
We're good.
little piece of half acre
When you guys look at
land.
it.
And I talked to him and I made the offer to
I've been
him.
writing 98
He said, but
for 3 years.
I have a concern,
There's 9800.
and that is
So,
that this
that's
is
what
a
I think.
name
We don't know
of Willie
how
Workers,
exactly they got
which
to it or if
no
they got
longer
to it,
exists.
but
And there was
You
a
said minus the lake and minus what?
The towns.
a far-flung
really
group,
don't dictate
some of them in
towns,
DC and whatever.
Right.
And I said, you need to do a title search on this and see if there's something or
I got about a 5-10 minute little power nap.
That would kill me.
not, we could find ourselves a whole pawn shop
Wonder who left the charger here.
All right,
for a half acre.
ready, guys?
Yes, sir.
All right, calling this May meeting of the Planning Commission work session to order. And I'm going to move directly into the new business here. And I'd like to start, instead of the utility scale solar, I'd like to start with the zoning district uses and matrices, or uses and use matrix. And I just lost Mr. Coons, who I was going to call on. I'm sure he'll be here in a moment.
He had a premonition.
I think he did. Here he comes.
He said he's done.
All right, Mr. Coons, we're starting with the zoning districts.
Right. So what we have before you is the items that are defined in the zoning code, but do not show up in any of the zoning districts as a permitted use or a use allowed with a conditional use permit. So because of that, what we wanted to do is have a conversation, see where you guys think either we should exit out and not allow it in any district anywhere in the county, or if there's some that should require CUP or by right, have the conversation, and this way we'll have all of our defined uses in the matrix, so that if anybody were to ask the question, we can show them this is the intent and this is where we're at.
All right?
So,
And before we go further, I asked Mr. Coons and the staff to provide in front of you for tonight's meeting, the particular agricultural zones that we have in the county, along with the use statements for each one of them. So as we have a discussion, there might be a question, is C1 or C2 better? We'll all understand what actually is in C1 and C2, and we can look at it and see it right here rather than wonder and have to find it. Now, also, if there's any question on particular similarities between the definitions and the uses that we're considering and the other definitions in the code, that's available to be pulled up and looked at, the other uses, definitions for the uses in the code, so we can do that. So I guess, Mr. Coons, was there a recommendation from the county on what to do here?
my understanding was that several of these, the intent was to define them for the purpose of not needing to provide a zoning determination of what this use is or was. And then it was also determined that they weren't going to include it by right or with a conditional use permit because the intent was not to allow it. So basically all the ones that have adult, so the video viewing booth and arcade booth adult, the motion picture theater adult, and those are two that I know the intent was to have it X'd across every zoning district. And then the other one, I believe was call center was the other one that the intent was they had done it to define it so no zoning determination would be needed in the future, but the intent was not to allow them in any district. So those are three that, that was the original intent. And some of these other ones, I don't know the history or intent of them when they were added.
All right. Well,
The
what,
three uses that are Xed out all the way across, Chris?
It was the call center, the motion picture theater adult, and the video viewing booth or arcade booth adult. Those were the three that, they didn't want to allow it at all.
They have been Xed out?
They have not been Xed out. That was just
But
the
the
intent previously. But
recommendation.
like I said, this was a 50-50 call. They defined it and didn't allow it by right or with a conditional use permit. However, with the matrix here, they didn't include it in the matrix. So then if there's a question of, okay, well, it's defined, where is it allowed? It'd just be simpler if the intent is to not allow it in any, we just put it in the matrix and X across the board. So that way that it's very clear that we don't want it in any. So it's just to help with clarification.
So, I was just going to say, I think probably there's a lot of different ways we can tackle this. I'd like to work through as much as we can here to reduce the time in the public hearing. But we could go down the list, top to bottom, and talk about what everybody thinks.
Can I
Or-
ask one question of
We
the-
can start with questions. Mr. Brooks?
The ones that were here when we done the matrix. Do y'all have any recollection of any of these that, from that time period, that we discuss? If we did, I don't recall. I was hoping, George, you're always good at remembering stuff. Do you recall this type discussion?
I'll tell you what I recall. What I recall is we took we had the existing use matrix, and we marked that up. So if these were never in the existing use matrix, we never looked at them. That's my recollection, but I don't know.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's true. We just made changes to what we already had.
So it's, we have some that the intent is for 3 different items that should be Xed all the way across, and the others is up to discussion. I guess all of them.
Well,
are
they're all up for discussion. I just asked if there was a recommendation coming to us at all, and there's a possibility of a recommendation on those 3, but we probably need to look at them all one by one and see what we think about where they should go.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Goodwin, coming back.
we did this last time under the umbrella of updating the comp plan, which we are coming up on again, the 5-year mark at updating the comp plan. Is there some reason we need to do this now as opposed to waiting for the update on the comp plan, since that might influence what we do in the matrix, which is the way we did it last time?
If you guys want to, that's fine. This is just an administrative issue that came to the surface that we figured we'd try and address. And then, I mean, I agree with you that if we go to redo the comp plan or make amendments to it, we may want to review the whole matrix in its entirety instead of just these items. But like I said, this is just something that has come to the attention of staff, and we'd like to try and address it so that everything that's defined in the zoning code is included in the matrix. So anybody that is trying to open a business or come in and deal with some land use, they know exactly where the county stands and what their process is.
So the question is, do we leave them undefined or do we define them? Is that,
They are already defined.
they are defined?
They are defined in the zoning code and are there today. The only thing is they are not located in the zoning matrix. They are not located in any use permitted by right or permitted with a conditional use permit. So that's where we're at, is all of these items are defined, and we've got the definitions in the staff report, and it's just they are not located anywhere else in the zoning code. So the question is, if the intent is for all these different items to be not permitted in any of these designated locations, we can put an X on every single one of these boxes and call it a day. But there's some of these that if you guys feel a CUP or by right in certain districts would be reasonable, that is what we would change.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Goodwin.
One more, I think, and this is for the attorney. Are we opening ourselves up to liability to denying, and I'm thinking now specifically in the adult entertainment area, are we opening ourselves up to a liability of free speech or whatever?
This is a small group, Commissioner. I think that there are concerns about whether or not you can prohibit wholesale any particular use of property. It goes to the concerns of property rights for individuals, generally speaking. Mr. Kuhn and I were speaking about this just a moment ago. I think there is some concern about prohibiting something wholesale in all districts. Now, whether or not you can place reasonable restrictions in your criteria for conditional use or special exception or the like in the ordinance would be up for, deeper discussion. But I do believe there is concern about having to place a prohibition, so to speak, on all property uses for a particular piece.
For the minutes.
I'll come up there.
Thank you, I appreciate that. That's where my mind was going. That we've got a,
I do believe we have some uses currently in the table that are Xed out across the board. Not for sure, but that's what I remember.
And in the state of Virginia, applicants,
thought he said only 3.
No, I mean, I don't mean this exercise. I mean currently. If you look at the use tables currently, I think we have some Xed out all the way across the board.
and then also in the state of Virginia, individuals could come to the Board of Supervisors and request a special exception. So it's not, this would be the end-all be-all. They don't have any opportunities to do any of these items. It would just be, they wouldn't come and be able to do it by right, and it wouldn't necessarily be a CUP process. It would just be the special exception process, which,
That
Zanus
goes
can.
straight to the board, right?
Correct. And it's got its own requirements and things that they would need to address.
Mr. Barlow?
So that y'all are not wondering where this came from, I can tell you what prompted it. The truck stop that is being looked at Gum Springs was, they had a zoning determination from years ago when I think it was Flying J or something like that was coming into Zion's Crossroads. And subsequent to that,
Can you get closer to the microphone?
Yeah.
They can't hear you, sir.
This started with the application that Love's has in for the Gum Springs truck stop. We had, I think, 3 neighborhood meetings down there, and it was told that it was a by right use. And the more I got to thinking about it, how could something like of that magnitude be by right? Well, anyway, I got to reading through the ordinance and found out that it's not by right. It's not use at all. And that, when it got to looking through it, I think staff found out that there were some other things as well that are defined so that they got a clear definition in the ordinance, but they're simply not in any of the zoning classifications or in the matrix. So that's what prompted this to come forward, to look at those things, to see. I thought that it was maybe an oversight, something that gotten left out until they found several others. But I called Jeff Farrell yesterday and talked to Jeff, and of course he was the author of this thing. And you all that can remember, I know y'all spent meeting after meeting and line by line on this stuff. And Jeff said that no, they defined it, in particular the truck stop, so that there would be no question as to what the definition is. And he and Robert Gardner, and it came by the Planning Commission, that's the definition that's in the ordinance now. And he said at that time, it was simply left out because it was not a wanted use anywhere. So the thing now that I think the Planning Commission is looking at, it would be look at that use or that definition as well as the other ones that they found, and see if now you want to add it in, or you want to add it in with CUP. There's also a classification of by right with restrictions. It's basically go back at those ones that were left out and not in the matrix and see what you want to do with it. But it's that application, and to address Mr. Goodwin's thing about the last time, and my memory's not that all that good, so that's the reason I called Jeff. I knew he would remember the thing. But anyway, it wasn't totally because of the comp plan. They were having some issues with the zoning and subdivision ordinance and stuff like that, and things that they wanted to fix. It turned out to be a pretty in-depth rewrite, but that's where you got the matrix and all that kind of stuff. But in my conversation with Jeff, and I do remember that you all went through everything line by line and right across the board, and either added it, didn't add it. And Jeff said that it wasn't an accident that it's not in the matrix. So I guess the what we need to do now is look at it and see if it's something that we want to add, because now currently this truck stop that has made application is sort of in limbo. It's not an allowed use now, correct? And that's we talked to Dale and Christian, and we had a meeting on it, and so that it wasn't just me thinking it wasn't. Everybody's in agreement currently. The truck stop that they're making application for is not only by right, it's not allowed, period. So, we're looking at this to see if we want to amend the ordinance to, number one, you could allow it by right in the C2 or whatever zone. You could say, okay, we'll allow it with conditions, as a CUP. And but that's the reason it came back to the Planning Commission, to take a look at it and see with those, 7 of them?
Oh, no, there's
I'm not sure
about
what,
10 or 12,
whatever it
I'm
is.
confused.
13.
14.
We got at least 2 truck stops. Got one at Gum Springs,
Sorry.
and we got one at Zion's Crossroads. And yet, it's not allowed. Were they grandfathered? What?
They just happen, and the definition and the matrix all came about in 2021. And see, to go a little further history, there wasn't a definition, so Mr. Gardner drafted a zoning determination that said, okay, part of the use is restaurant,
Gas station,
part of the use is a fueling station,
restaurant.
and they are allowed in the C2. I think that was a stretch, but anyways, after that zoning determination, which was, I'm not sure when that was written, but several years ago. Subsequent to that, in 21 is when this rewrite of the ordinance came about with the matrix and all that stuff. So the Loves have been provided with the zoning determination letter some time ago. And even at our neighborhood meetings, it was discussed, it was by right, until we find out that it's in the 21 ordinance that is, was passed, it's not by right. It does have a definition though, but that's one of several things. And so, I don't know that the original draft when we went back and looked at it, I don't believe it was solely instigated because of the comp plan. I think it was because of problems we were having with it. And so now we've got these few issues that has come about because we discovered that the definition is not allowed, and it came about because of the truck stop. So that's what brought it about.
Mr. Chair, my recollection is that it did come out of the comp plan, and the whole idea that we wanted to ramp back the commercial development in the center of the county. And that's why we knocked the growth areas down by 80%. And then by doing that, then we needed to come back and look at this, because you couldn't have this operating at a high level while the zoning was being reduced by 80%. So I think there was a kickover. It may not have been obvious to everybody, but like you, I was in all those meetings. Now I've got another question, Mr. Chair, for the attorney, and that is, can we look at this stuff and change it after the application has been submitted?
The only application we have is for rezoning, and right now it's not allowed by right or with a conditional use permit in any zoning. So any applicant or property owner can request a rezoning at any point in time.
I'm talking about Love's.
I understand.
Okay.
All we have is an application for rezoning. So it's
But
not for a
no,
particular
no
use.
use is tied to it. Okay.
As of right now, I mean, maybe that's, the narrative would include that, but an applicant can request a rezoning for any purpose.
Right.
But regardless of what happens today, if you guys were to choose to put X's across the board, I mean, and you can answer the question, but that's one of the reasons why we felt comfortable bringing it to you today, is because the application is for rezoning, and regardless of what you guys choose to do, it currently isn't allowed, permitted, or with the CUP. So because of that, if you choose to do nothing, stays the same, and if you choose to make a CUP or by right, it actually would benefit them, so.
Commissioner, I think that's right. I think that the change here of placing the designated use of truck stop into a particular use and placing it onto the matrix would not in some way complicate the application as it currently sits with the community development team.
Are we, Mr. Chair, are we comfortable the definition that we have for a truck stop is good now? Because some of these suckers, not only fueling and restaurants, but they've got wash stations in there where truckers can take showers. Some of them even have living spaces
Yep.
where they can rent overnight.
We've got one or more places to eat, fuel islands, and may include but not limited to service garage, weigh station, truck wash, and showers. So that is included in the current definition.
But not living quarters.
Well, but it says also but not limited to, so just
Okay.
provide some examples.
Okay,
But, I
just want to
mean,
make sure, because some of these big ones, it's full service.
and then the only other item, Chairman, if you don't mind. So we do have recreational facility public, so it's publicly owned or operated recreational facility. For that one, I would just ask that we follow a civic use, because we're required to get CUPs in agriculture zone. And really, a civic use is anything that's owned by the government. So this is just, I guess, an additional definition for something that's already publicly owned. So that's just one recommendation, that if it followed suit with the civic use.
It- Do we need this definition then, if a public recreation facility is a civic use?
I could see it going either way, if we kept it and had the same use allowable as the civic use, or if we didn't need it, because like we said, civic is defined as anything that the county owns, so. I can't speak to the original reason the definition was added. Tom, can you pull up civic
So,
use, that definition?
civic use is only what the county owns.
We're gonna pull up the definition.
Because I'm wondering about
Here you
the
go.
Lions Club property on School Bus Road and the Ruatan Club down in Holly Grove and
Playgrounds.
Public parks and playgrounds, public schools, municipal buildings, including police, fire, and rescue facilities, and all other publicly owned structures. So, publicly owned or operated recreational facilities, I think, would fit within that definition.
Sounds to me like that's a change to the definition rather than a new use. But I,
They got public assembly under the uses, under civic. Sort of same public park, recreational area,
yeah. I didn't bring my.
public recreation assembly.
And then, Commissioner Goodwin, just to speak to your item, I think that would go under club, a use providing
Yeah,
educational
I'm
meeting
looking
or
at down
social
there,
facility.
civic or social clubs.
To that Roatan and Moose Lodge.
So I guess we have to ask ourselves a little bit whether do we want to go ahead and populate a table tonight on all these, or, I don't know. I took a stab at it my own, just to be ready tonight to talk. I don't know if anybody else took a stab at populating these things or not.
Somewhat to some degree.
To some degree, yeah. Well, you know, everything is a starting point, and then you work through it. I guess the first question is, do the planning commissioners feel like we've had enough time and have enough understanding of what we're asked to do, to look at all of these? Or should we simply look at the one that's causing the trouble, disposition that, and take a longer action on the rest to get this right?
I think that sounds like a darn good idea.
Well,
I agree, and I'm going back to the conversations we've had when, we've had several of them in the last year, but mainly on the TODs, where people said it was a game changer. And that's why I want to get back to looking at the comprehensive plan to see just what different people think is a game changer.
mm-hmm,
And then take that thought and then go through all of it.
mm-hmm.
Because I'm not sure I know what a game changer means to everybody at this table or that's table on Mondays and first and third Mondays. So I guess I'm agreeing with you. I still want to take the holistic approach of going through the comp plan, understanding what a game changer means,
Mm-hmm.
and then applying that to this. And I'm not ready to do that yet until we have that conversation.
All right. Is that the general feeling of, because I'm,
Mr. Chairman, it is if we can address the truck stop.
do we feel like, that's the next question.
Yeah.
Do we feel like we can address the truck stop tonight to resolve the immediate issue without looking at the rest of them? And Mr. Coons, I take it that is the immediate issue.
Yes, that is one of them.
One of them, oh, well,
I was going to say, if you go after this as a singular, Mr. Chair, I think you really open yourself up to a liability issue.
well,
If we don't take a little bit bigger look, maybe at least those, you said there were 7? I'm a little confused with 7 or 3, but if we don't take it on a little broader scope, it's going to look like we are singling out one applicant, and that,
13 of them.
I'll see you in court.
Mr. Chair.
yes, Mr.
Just
Purcell.
curious, I wasn't here when this was approved, but the greenhouse is over by the airport. How was that approved if that was defined here?
My understanding is that it's agricultural use. So it's the agriculture exemption
Okay.
That is a good, that's
nice.
exactly how it was.
That's how it was?
Yeah, because they're growing food.
Well, yeah, it's not, this, according to this definition, by the way, this is a greenhouse operation offering plants for sale to the public, either wholesale or retail, and that's a wholesale food distribution as opposed to selling plants.
Itself, okay.
Yeah, kind of thing. So it's a different thing entirely. Yeah. Well, then, I would like to hear the will of the commission on which is the best way to go at this point, then, having heard several things.
If we hold any action until we take a look at the comp plan, what does that do to the current application or any other questions that exist for staff?
So the current application would come before you for
Purely a rezone.
rezoning. What they decided to do after that, it would probably be a special exception. So then it wouldn't come to you guys, it'd end up going straight to the board.
How would they know what to rezone it to?
How would they know what to rezone it to? Based on, my understanding was the zoning determination letter that they had in their possession was from a prior owner that had requested the zoning determination and wasn't able to move forward with the project. So then that's when they came in, and it was the existing zoning determination on that property, which was before the 2021 update. And I believe that's why they moved forward with the rezoning to the C2 in the growth area, because that was what the zoning determination had indicated.
Mr. Barlow?
The front portion is zoned C2. The back portion is zoned A2. So the thought was, initially when I heard it, I thought they were rezoning a small portion of the A2 to allow for sewage treatment and an extra row of parking. But it turns out they want to rezone all of the A2 portion to C2. And the idea was, the thought at the time was that the truck stop was by right in C2, which we know now that it isn't. So if they, and I've said ain't enough of the planning commission meetings to know that you all like to know what somebody's proposing or what they plan on doing. I'm not real sure if, until the issue over the truck stop is resolved, I don't know why they would continue forward with the A2, with the rezoning. And I don't know whether, I guess they applied for the rezoning a good while ago.
But
And they have not retracted that.
if their application is complete and able to come, and they do everything that's required, they do have the ability to come before you for the rezoning. So that's, regardless of what you all choose, that they can come forward with that. Or they may choose to just request a special exception from the board for those two parcels and bypass this entirely. And not saying they would get it or not, I'm just, as an applicant, those would be their alternatives, that if they were to ask us, well, how can we go forward, that would be the case that they could go forward.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chair, go ahead.
Mr. Brooks? We'll come back.
The problem looked like, in my mind's eye, is we've been told that we have a truck stop definition. We don't have a truck stop listed in the use. If we don't have a truck stop listed in the use, then if we don't have a use, you can't apply because it's not allowed.
So in the state of Virginia, an applicant can request a special exception from the Board of Supervisors for any use. So that is,
So that's the route, is not to go through a rezoning, or CUP is to go straight to the board with a special use permit.
If they would like to do that. However, if we do have it defined as a use that's allowable with a conditional use permit, then the state code dictates the conditional use permit and how that process is, the
At
advertisement.
this point, we don't have a conditional use permit requirement.
Correct.
So it's not a by right use. It's not a use because it doesn't exist in the zoning,
So that,
any zoning district.
correct. So that's why they would have to go for a special exception and see if the board decides to grant it or not.
Comprehensive plan review.
Hold that thought for just a minute.
All right.
Let me ask a legal question, unless we have one coming to the table already. Maybe more than one, we'll see. So,
Mr. Chairman.
so the first one, as Commissioner Goodwin suggested, are we particularly subject to any litigation if we select one item out of this table and disposition it in order to expedite things on the table right now before we look at the rest and put the rest of them in a different kind of business?
It's a good question, Mr. Chairman. I don't believe that that single action of making a disposition on the truck stop definition today, assigning it to a particular use designation, would create liability for the county by a potential applicant or those that come there afterwards. I don't think that that rises to a certain level of what would generally be considered some level of discrimination on a particular use, but that's not the case here. The commission would be simply assigning a use to a particular designation within the matrix, as what would be done in the ordinary course at any given time.
All right. The other thing, and Mr. Coons, you can help here. Let me just clarify. Sometimes I get so much information going into mine, I can't keep everything in order, right? The application for the Love's Truck Stop, is that application in hand in the county? Do you all have it
A rezoning.
for a
only.
rezoning only?
Correct.
But it has not been deemed completed.
But it's not completed.
Correct.
So we're not, so we're able to take an action on it, or an action on doing something here that might affect that, because,
Based on my understanding, there's
well,
no-
let's get the legal understanding.
Yeah, well,
I appreciate it.
I was gonna say, but there's no action you all could take that could change the circumstance for this application.
Okay, now we'll get the legal answer.
I think the question is whether or not the submission of the application has created some level of vested rights for the applicant.
That's the
I don't
question.
believe that has occurred since it has not yet been deemed complete and accepted by the community development, the zoning department.
I
And
see.
so I don't believe that would be an implication at this particular moment.
So what about the time, at least 2 weeks, between the time we take action, if we were to take it tonight, and it would go to the board? If it were deemed complete in that time, I mean, we just make the recommendations, the board dispositions them. Would that be a problem then?
And you're saying if the
If
zoning
the-
department had deemed that application complete and then the board of
Yeah,
supervisors made a decision
In
on
the
it?
interim time?
So that's a different question.
Just curious.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I'd have to check a little bit more on this one. I don't want to give you a final answer here, but my, initial consideration and thinking is that once the application is deemed, as have been, completed, it then falls back into the crux of the determination, the zoning determination has been made on this application already. And my understanding of that determination was simply to inform the applicant that this use is not designated in any of the use categories or in the matrix at all. And it doesn't, but correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, if I get this, if I misunderstand, it does not, prevent the applicant from moving forward in its current rezoning, but whether or not that current rezoning will be able to allow for its uses as they propose, will have to be a determination that's made thereafter. That's where I'm at right now on that.
All right. Mr. Dickerson, you had maybe a suggestion?
Since we do have this upcoming comprehensive plan review, and to move forward tonight, I was thinking about saying no to in all areas, the 2 adult categories and the call center, and looking at conditional use permits for everything else. And then we could look at it closer as we get into the comprehensive plan and spend more time digging into it. Or we could say no to those 3 uses and use conditional use permit for the truck stop and not address anything else and dig into that deeper when we have more time with the comprehensive plan.
Mr. Chair,
Good one.
we got a similar situation going on down at Pleasance Landing between 2 neighbors, where something has gone through or has at least been submitted, and then after the fact, in this case, it was a neighbor, not the county, they came in and wanted to rezone, which would make him have to totally redo his plans, start from scratch because of different setback, what he wants to rezone to. I'm having a moral issue with this. I'm gonna be honest. This is changing the circumstances after the application has been submitted, whether it's accepted or not. I'm not sure where that dividing line is. And trying to set up a roadblock after the fact. And I got a problem with that. Is it the right thing to do? And I can't get there. I can't get there. To say that now they've made their thoughts known, well, let's go right here and get in front of them and throw a roadblock. That ain't right. I'm sorry.
So just, and I don't disagree with you at all. So to follow up on that question, because I thought I heard an answer given to that earlier, is this, if we take an action tonight, is it a roadblock or does it clear questions that are unknown towards moving a project forward or not? How would it impact the project? That's the question. Not whether or not anybody would approve the project, but how would making the change, if we were to define what has to happen where, how would it affect the project approval or the project moving along?
Absolutely. Mr. Chairman, I think the practical effect would be this. If you all, this commission were to make a decision tonight on a use designation and the board were to follow your recommendation, and at that time, the application still not be completed, I think the community development team would be very well within its ambit and should do so, is to inform the applicant where in fact they should now change the rezoning to, where that use is then placed into the ordinance. That's one practicality of it all, so if that were to occur. Now, if the commission were to restrict outright this use in any zoning district, then it would be left for the applicant to make the determination whether or not it wanted to proceed on the rezoning, which in effect would not allow the truck stop, given the placement of it in the ordinance of being all X'd out, and then have to subject it to have to proceed with the special exception process to the board directly. So those would be the 2 processes, I believe, given the consequence of a decision tonight.
I guess where my question, I get that, but where my question is going, because I'm going to make an assumption here that it would not all be X'd out. So we would more or less, and maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I don't know how it's going to turn out yet. We haven't gotten there. But assuming it's not all X'd out, we would be providing further clarification on what needs to happen in order to, for the applicant to understand how to get through the process. So this is my question to try and follow up on what Commissioner Goodwin's concern is. Are we actually creating an impediment by doing something, or are we providing guidance to help them through the process? So that's, and I think that turns on whether or not we have a significant issue, and maybe not. And I don't want to speak for you. I'm just trying to
Well,
clear
Mr.
up
Chair,
understanding where we're going. That's all.
I'm of the opinion that if we knew nothing about plans for a truck stop, we would not be having this meeting tonight. That's my moral issue.
Okay.
We would not be having this meeting. And if whatever we do here doesn't affect anything, then why are we doing it at all? So, I can't get away from that. I'm sorry, I don't mean to
No,
be
yeah.
that way, but if we didn't know one thing about the plans in Gum Springs, we would not be having this meeting tonight. And I don't think anybody in this room would say otherwise.
Mr. Jarvis.
I know. Even though I'm not a voting member, I agree with Mr. Goodwin. We've had a couple of situations in the town of Mineral because our code has not been stellar, that we've had to eat some humble pie because somebody did an end run because our code wasn't really spelled out. And once we knew what they were doing, there were possibilities of trying to, as Mr. Goodwin said, put a roadblock. I have been saying for the 24 years that I have lived there, the code needs to be brought up to date because one of these days, the town of Mineral is going to be found out and we're going to be in a housing boom. Well, that time is here and now we're playing catch up, but you know, it's about what this group is doing, the transparency and fixing those things, but not necessarily giving the impression that it's a roadblock or, oops, we should have done this. We make a note of it and then we go back and correct it, but, you know, that's the best we can do at this point. So, you know, I know nobody's deliberately doing, you know, trying to do this roadblock, but it is kind of a, once you tip your hand, well, I'm not going to go all in now. I'm going to come out because you got 4 aces and I only had 3, you know, so just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Mr. Barlow.
The application was made back in February of this year or
Last year.
February of last year, 23. The ordinance was in 21, correct?
Correct.
I mean, that's when we passed it. So currently, the roadblock is, it's not allowed. So if you decide to allow it by CUP, you're removing, in other words, you're giving them an out, a way to do it. The way it exists right now, it's not allowed, period. If you decide to add the CUP to it, make it allowable by CUP, then it would be an allowable use. So actually, it's making it a little more, it's giving them a way to move forward. If we leave it just like it is, then it's not allowed in the A2 or the C2, either one. So it's just, and I can tell you, I don't care. But I'm just saying that right now, that application came in after the zoning was done. So it's not putting a roadblock, you know, in front of them. The roadblock is there. It just, we didn't know about it or didn't recognize it when the application came in. Now we do. So that, in other words, if you had instituted the 21 ordinance, you know, after you had an application, then that would have been creating a roadblock for them. But that ordinance was in place before the application was done. So, like I say, right now, truck stop is not allowed in A2, C2, industrial, nowhere. If you decide to allow it by CUP, or if you decide to allow it by right, then it becomes, you know, allowable. But, right, so what I'm trying to say is, it's not putting a roadblock in front of them now, it's removing one, basically.
And the only thing we have to add to that is that if you all chose not to do anything, board wouldn't move forward, then they would still have the ability to request a special exception. So even if, let's say you guys decided, okay, we're gonna do the I-1 truck stops are allowed with the CUP, which they're trying to rezone to the C2, so that doesn't work out for them, they still reserve the right that they can request a conditional use permit, a special exception from the board. So, just like Supervisor Barlow mentioned, the roadblock is where they're at right now is that they're gonna need to request a special exception from the board. If you all were to choose to either allow it by right or with a conditional use permit, the only difference is then they would have to go through the CUP process, which you all are familiar with, the rezoning and CUP application at the same time, which is probably something that this applicant would want to do. So, I mean, stand ready to answer any questions.
And just to clarify, if it goes a special exception route, then it does not, anything that goes special exception route does not come through the planning commission for any review or consideration, proposals, requirements, proffers, anything. It
Unless
goes directly to the board.
It goes directly to the board, and then it would be up to the board to determine if they want to send it back down. But my understanding is it would not be treated like a CUP, so there would not be the full application and same notice and letting the adjoining property, that there's different rules when it comes to that. So if it's special exception, go to the board, then come to you guys for recommendation, it would be treated much differently than a CUP. So that's just some food for thought on this is.
It's this way.
Mr. Barlow?
I can only speak for one person on the board, but I'm a firm believer special exceptions are for small things that are generally a hardship. I would not even consider something like this for special exception. It's, it needs to go through the process. Like I say, I can't speak for the rest of the board, but we have special exceptions in place, and they're exactly what that is for the example I use is if somebody has a lot and they want to build and their perk site pushes their house too close to a setback and they need a variance or special exception for that, then that's what, to me, the special exception is for, not for a truck stop or 10-story building or anything else. They can apply for a special exception. They're exactly right. They can do that legally. They won't get one vote. And simply because that, to me, is not what a special exception is intended for.
Thank you.
Mr.
Hell,
Chair,
Mr. Goodwin?
I appreciate your clearing up my misconception on a roadblock. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your ruling, sir, that if we just deal with one thing, you don't think that we take on a liability issue.
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I would be in favor of C1 and C2 being CUP and X's everywhere else. And that's C1, C2 in the growth overlay district only.
C1 and C2 growth area overlay districicts.
Yes,
Not C1 and C2 otherwise.
correct.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, are you speaking as to the truck stop being
Yes.
placed in
Yes.
one of those two
Yes.
under just CUP?
CUP.
CUP. Yeah.
CUP, and it's only C1, C2, and a growth overlay district.
Yeah, that gets me there too.
Again, trying to get back to at least the comp plan as exists today. Still reluctant to go any further until we go through the comp plan.
So that would allow a path forward instead of the roadblock, right? A
But not-
potential,
but
a
not
potential, because they'd have to
necessarily
go
an
through the
approval.
CU approved process.
Correct.
Yes, this does not, there is no approval in any of this.
And it
This
would
just
require
defines
them
a
to
path.
come in with a preliminary site plan. It would allow us to come in and put conditions on that CUP.
Exactly.
Which rezoning with an unspecified use, we don't get that.
Exactly. I've come to learn that. Mr. Brooks, how do you feel about that?
That is the same thing. Actually, I had just said C2 with a CUP, but C1, C2 both in the growth area district is the same thing I had.
And
Now,
that's going back to the intent, excuse me, go ahead.
yeah, now, I think there's other issues that we may want to address as we move forward in this. You know, to talk like about restrictions we can add, and I think that we need to look at truck stops in the county and where they should or should not be located, and any other restrictions that we may think may affect it. I don't want to get over our skis too much. It's what your perception of what was going on, a roadblock being set. I
Right.
don't want to get too crazy with restrictions, but I think at a minimum, a CUP is what anybody would expect in this situation.
Yeah.
But after that, if we address these other items at a later date, I think we need to look at some restrictions.
We've got the growth area in Gordonsville and Louisa and in Mineral, in addition to the 64 corridor in New Bridge. So that's why I'm kind of in favor of staying in the growth areas, because that's the spirit of the existing comp plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Well said.
Mr. Kersey, are you agreeable, just in
I think I
principle,
would
to
still
moving down
prefer
this
to
path?
wait till the comp plan, because you may change those growth areas, and if you do, that would change your dynamic on this again. So I would prefer waiting until we address the comp plan.
Well, we're not voting here in the work session. We're just talking it out, but that's good, good to know. Mr. Dickerson, did you have any thoughts on the proposal on the table?
I like the most recent version.
All
I
right,
support that.
very good. Well, I think then if we're only going to take up the truck stop, we've probably hammered this one out as far as we're going to hammer it out.
If
And
that's
we've-
the pleasure of the committee.
I think, to me at least, I think it's reasonable considering what we went through with the comp plan before to really have a little bit of time. Some of these, in looking through the definitions, some of these make sense to put them in one or two places, but others we may want to talk a little bit further about. So I think it makes sense to have it as a part of the comp plan update. And hopefully we won't get 5 or 6 more applications for things in here off this list before we can update the comp plan.
Mr. Chair, I totally agree with Commissioner Kersey, completely. But if we are removing a roadblock, I am in favor of giving them their day in court. But the rest of them, I think we ought to go through the comp plan and see how this game changer is going to play out.
Very good. Mr. Coons, did you have anything
Can I
else
just
for
read
us?
the notes that I had for the different?
You may.
Okay, so I had, in all areas, remove call center, motion picture theater adult, and video viewing booth or arcade booth adult. The truck stops, C1 growth area and C2 by CUP. And then we had a comment. You looking at me?
I'm looking at you because I'm just, what are your notes intending to tell us?
I just want to make sure this is just surmising, so Supervisor Dickerson, or Commissioner Dickerson had suggested removing those 3 items in all areas. Commissioner Goodwin had suggested the preparing for CUP in the C1, C2 growth area, and then you had spoken about potentially removing the recreational facility public.
Yeah, I mean, it's just as a part of the discussion tonight, yeah. But I think where we're headed, probably at public hearing, is just to address the truck stop.
Understood.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I get
Mr.
clarification?
Barlow, yes.
The 3 things that you mentioned taken out, they're not Xed in there right now. I mean, they're just like a truck stop. You have a definition, but they're not in the matrix anywhere, are they?
Correct.
That's what, so you're not taking them out.
No.
You're just not
Not
allowed.
allowed anyway.
It's not addressed.
Currently allowed, yeah.
So the only
They're currently
issue that
not.
would have with staff is that if someone wants to come with a similar use, they would request a zoning determination. Our zoning administrator would have to write a letter to determine if that is the use that it actually is. And then once that zoning determination is provided, then it would just have to be a special exception. If it was Xed out already, there's no need for the zoning determination. It would just have to go to the special exception, because it'd be any item that's Xed out fully would require a special exception. So it's
Yes.
neither here nor there. It's just a little extra staff time.
Right.
If it's not Xed out, wouldn't it also
Got
require a
that
special
plugged.
exception?
Yes.
What I'm thinking.
Yeah, but it's
And
no
we know
zoning
they're not gonna get one
determination.
vote.
No zoning determination would be required, because it would already be established in the code. That's the difference. That's all.
I don't know. That is a good question. Sorry. Mr. Coons, is there anything else that you would have for us on the issue of the zoning districts?
No, sir.
Wonderful. All right, then let's move on to the utility scale solar generation. Did you have a short discussion for us on that?
Yes.
Yeah, so,
All right, so where we are at today is the solar committee from the board, which is Supervisor Barnes and Chairman Adams, had requested that we send a potential drop from 3% to 2% for the total acreage of the county for solar. Where we're at today is that there's been 5,211.734 acres approved in the CUP process. Is 611 acres, .574. So if we were to drop it to 2%, the acreage would end up being 6,343 acres. We did do the math a little bit differently, because what we did do is, there you go, we had taken the towns out because they are not dictated by the county zoning. They have their own zoning. And then we also removed the acreage for the lake. So just a reminder, where we're at between the approved and in the CUP process is 5,822 acres, and then I'll have to figure out with plus the change. So because of that, we would need to make sure that the cap allowed for the items that are currently in the CUP process, which Green Boot is one, and Tom, what is the other?
Turkey and Panera.
Okay, then we've got some others. Have they come to the planning commission already?
All 3 have been through the planning commission.
Okay, so we've got 3 that have come to planning commission but have yet to go through the board.
Are those 3 under the allowable acreage and what you all are proposing?
So those 3 would be included in the CUP process.
Yeah, that's it, 611.
Yes, sir, that's the 611. So between Tom, go back for me.
Sorry.
So between the approved and in the CUP process, we have 5,823 acres, .308. So like I said, the only update to what's in the agenda packet is the 2%, because we removed the towns and the lake. What's before you today says 6,534 acres, and 2% would be 6,343.
Does anybody have any questions about this? I mean, this, just, Mr. Brooks, go ahead. We'll come back to you, John.
Chris, I was reading one of the letters, I don't forgot now, I think it was the one from the attorney, talking about the citing agreement legislation. Can you, I'm not sure if I know what she was talking about. Can you, do you?
I don't know what email you're speaking of.
Was it one from William Mullen, out of Charlottesville, I believe? She referred to the funds available through the citing agreement legislation.
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody?
So, I mean, there's legislation that requires these solar facilities to offer a siting agreement to the county. So then that's where, I'm trying to think, Tom, what was the most recent one that had the siting agreement? Oaks Solar had the siting agreement that went before the board regarding the revenue sharing or the different payments, and it's structured of, you know, basically what the locality would get based on that solar site. So that's what siting agreements are, but I don't think any have come for you all. Is that correct?
No.
Yeah. So the ones, several of them had been approved prior to the siting agreement legislation, and then afterwards, the companies had to come and offer that agreement. But we've only had one go to the
So-
Board of Supervisors.
So that's why I haven't seen that term anywhere. It's all new.
Yeah, it's relatively new, yes, sir. I think within the past year and a half, maybe?
And that's providing, this is in the letter, yeah, Williams Mullen, dated May 8th. She was speaking of, how did she put it? A future income stream.
Yeah, that's the agreement that allows the county to work with the applicant to choose one method of revenue over another.
Okay.
They come right on that, Tommy. That's why they come in and say, if you choose this, it would be this for the county. If you choose this method, it'll be that. And it has to do, I think, with amortizing it over the life of the project as opposed to upfront.
Okay.
Isn't that right, Mr. Chairman?
I believe you're
I
correct.
believe that's correct.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the same letter.
It's page 2.
Yeah.
It just kind of caught my eye. And I guess another question, or has any of these applications or any solar field applications been approved since the most recent amendment to the requirements for the solar field?
No, sir.
So we've got a new ordinance that was a do-all, fix-all, that we've never approved everything under, but now we're trying to reduce it.
Correct.
Correct, is what it amounts to.
Yes. So, I mean, if we reduce the amount of acreage that's allowable for solar, we would get very close to being done with solar applications.
So, I kind of look at that as roadblocking, as George did the previous one. It concerns me that anybody that has been working under these guidelines for the last few months or the last year, or how long this has been, and now we get a new wrinkle thrown in.
So anybody that started the process and has been in conversations with the county, like it's in the CUP process, would not be. So if someone's working that we're unaware of, I believe you all received an email from an individual that's spoken something about that, but we aren't aware of it, and we don't have any application in hand regarding any of those items.
All right, but I guess it just hard me to grasp. We're already lowering it and hadn't even used it yet. We want to go from 3% to 2%.
I mean, we have had several applications come in since then. They just haven't gone through the Board of Supervisors, and so we have had it. I mean, the 300-foot buffers were required for several that have gone through you all, and
Yeah,
so it has worked and been utilized for several applications.
but nothing's been approved by the board
Correct.
under the new regulations. Okay.
Mr. Goodwin.
Mr. Chair. I'm thinking now about the greenhouse on School Bus Road and the ruling by the previous attorney that the county cannot regulate agricultural use. How are these two going to interact? Let's say that Future Farms on School Bus Road wants to run completely off of solar, and it puts us over the cap.
Tom, can you bring up utility scale solar? So with this,
This says minor too. Utility scale and minor.
and so with these definitions, let's see, so small scale would be the 30. On-site may include adjacent parcels. So that's the other thing is the roof-mounted solar array does not require zoning approval. So it depends on how they do it. So if they,
I'm getting back to state law, the Attorney General's, which I did not agree with the attorney's interpretation of that. I think I've made that known.
And in my conversations with the Attorney General, he didn't agree with it either.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering, when it said that if it is a legitimate agricultural activity on land that is zoned agricultural, that the county cannot put restrictions on, you can't use our ordinances to put restrictions on them.
I don't think that's correct. I don't think that we were talking about agritourism, and they were saying for, if it involves agritourism, we could not put restrictions on like the bed and breakfast,
Short-term rental.
the short-term rental, those kind of things, if it involved agritourism, that we were locked out of that.
Okay, all right,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
I just want to make sure we're not going to get crossways on this thing, with somebody coming in and challenging us for legitimate agricultural use and,
But not only that, the greenhouse out here,
I mean, it's energy conversion system.
they're a commercial use as opposed to an agricultural use, oddly enough. Because where they initially proposed it, in the old Green Bay Farm, that was the initial proposal, that would have been on ag land, and they would have had to get a CUP because they weren't doing agriculture, they were doing a commercial use. It was crazy, because they're really doing agriculture. So the whole thing was balled up. But
okay, I just
But
wanted to ask
yeah,
that question,
yeah.
make sure we're not going to get
But
crossways.
I think we've got a legal opinion stepping to the mic as I was speaking, and I hate to cut off any legal opinion we can get benefit from.
I am not the Attorney General, so you don't have to dispute my determinations. But I just wanted to address on behalf of the County Attorney's Office the legality of putting a cap on the solar uses generally in the county. There are a number of jurisdictions that I've had some time to take a look at, which has now lost me in my notes here, with Mecklenburg County and some others that have gone, Isle of Wight and Surrey County are the three counties that have gone ahead and placed a cap on solar uses, solar farms and the like in their jurisdictions. It's unclear, and the law has not made a decision as to whether or not that is a lawful thing to do. There are some concerns about whether or not it violates Dillon's rule. As you all may know, the Commonwealth is restricted, localities are restricted from doing things they have not been expressly given the authority to do. The question here is whether or not a locality has been given the authority to place these caps on. So it's untested. There hasn't been a determination yet in the courts as to whether or not this is a lawful activity, placing caps on solar uses like this. But it has been done in other localities and has not yet faced a challenge where there has been a decision from a court. And so we are somewhat operating in waters that have not yet been tested, but that's where we stand on the legality of the action as it stands today, as it's contemplated in the proposal.
Mr. Chair, that means we're already at 3% at risk of being tested in court. Going to 2 is just another step.
However, we did find out in this previous legislative session that the legislature wasn't interested in figuring out what to do with solar either in the Commonwealth. So with them not interested in taking a hand in it, I'd say we're in pretty good shape right now until we're challenged. So,
I will agree that there was a bill on the House by Delegate, I think Van Valkenburg, I can't remember if that's his last name, Schuyler's his first name.
yeah, Van Valkenburg.
Where it died in the House. And so they attempted to pass a bill to prohibit these types of restrictions.
Yes.
So as the chairman notes, the legislature has at least attempted to contemplate this issue and has not made any final action on it. Now, whether or not a court will take that into consideration is a different question.
Just means that a big enough donor hadn't asked for it.
Yes, and never go to court if you can have surety outside. So, any other questions on the proposal here?
I do have one question.
Mr.
All
Goodwin.
the letters came in on, what is it, Invenergy?
Yeah,
Invenergy?
Invenergy.
Yes, sir.
Where is that and how big is it?
What is it?
The answer is we don't know because we haven't gotten any application for it.
Yeah, the letter said that if we do this, they can't do it. So it must be over 1,500 acres or thereabouts, based on your numbers.
Were they associated with the one that was being contemplated west of Shenandoah Crossings?
I know that
Were they
there's
the
been conversations, but I don't know who the specific business was associated with that. So it could be.
I just wonder whose ox is getting gored.
Well,
Yeah, I like I said, I don't know off the top of my head what business is associated with it. But I know there have been some conversations, but like I said, no application. In my understanding, the conversations that were had, there was no like total acreage contemplated. So
The names that were on signatory, if I may, then signatory names, a lot of those are Jackson District names.
So I don't know if then that would be associated with the item west of Shenandoah.
yeah, I
Okay.
don't know.
Like I said, I don't, that name does not ring a bell.
They
So
rang our bell this week.
They did.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chris.
Best of my knowledge.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Again, anything you all want to talk about during the work session, so we're ready to go when we get to the public hearing? Very good. The other item on the agenda for the work session was old business, and I'm fairly certain with the departure of Mr. Gillespie that old business is kind of staying in the old business category and not moving forward. I believe we had some, but I don't know. I'll ask to see if we had some updates on the word escapes me right offhand.
Transportation plan.
Yes, yes to both, yes. In any updates
I'm sorry, what were this?
on the small area plans and the
Transportation.
transportation plans? And the gateway was the other thing I was thinking of.
That's all
The
kind
gateway.
of rolled into the same thing, transportation.
All rolled into the same thing.
And I've been working with Chris on this. I had a setback medically, about 3 weeks ago, and I didn't get back to you as quickly as I should have, but I did send you an email.
Yeah.
That's a good lead-in. I don't know where we are in terms of the individual commissioners working on their gateways.
I don't have that answer either.
I don't know that any of us have that information. But Mr. Eglin maybe.
Before the departure of Josh Gillespie, there was an intent right before to Josh and I to work in team with individual planning commission members on many of the things we've you've brought up. You are correct, that's kind of taken a bit of a back burner as we reorganize after his departure. I'm sure Chris and I can get together and try to get the fire moving back on those items again.
Very good.
And what was it? I forgot. I'm sorry. Small area plan, transportation gateway, and what was the third one?
That was
Focus
it.
area.
That was actually, that was it.
Yep, so, Commissioner Goodwin and I will work on it. We did have some situations with VDOT. Anybody that lives off Kentucky Springs, Wares Crossroads knows that been a little bit of, VDOT heavy complaint area recently. So we're still, they had provided some things. They had to update the numbers, so they actually pulled down all their traffic count numbers because they went to a new system that was more accessible and easier to read, and I can't read it for the life of me. So I've got to get with some of the VDOT people that helped worked on that so we can figure out, because the original one had, it was traffic counts, peak hours, which direction the peak was, and now with the new system, kind of flying blind. So I need to have VDOT kind of explain that to me so we can start crunching which roadways are peak capacity or, use at a higher rate than others so we can try and
Just
incorporate
let
that.
me know, I'll make myself available whenever, if I can.
Yep, and VDOT has had one of the employees that would be able to help with that was on paternity leave, and he just got back last week, so a little bit of perfect storm, but we should get that. Like I said, the numbers are out. It's just I need to be able to read that Excel, and then we'll start being able to put stuff down on paper.
Very good. All right, does anyone have anything else for the work session?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr.
Talking
Goodwin.
with my supervisor,
Yes.
the issue that came up at our last meeting about the proffered but undefined uses on rezonings, I think we need to have a work session on that, figure out how we fix that.
All right,
If you remember, I was
I
a
do,
little agitated
I do.
that we get a conceptual site plan, and we set conditions for one thing, but then in the proffer, in one of them, there were 8 other uses, the other was 15 other uses, which
Yes.
we have no site plan, we have no conditions,
Yes.
and we gotta fix that. And I know my supervisor agrees with that too.
Well, and I hate to keep asking you, but since this is an issue that you are
I've always
Very-
told you if I bring it up, I'm willing to work on it.
very good, now, would someone like to work with Mr. Goodwin on resolving this issue? Asking for volunteers first. I'm looking up and down the table, I'm asking for volunteers, just to see
I'll
if
be glad
anybody.
to if nobody else
Mr.
jumps in
Dickerson
there.
would be glad to.
Those two have done well before.
Well, yeah, I hate to
Because
keep,
we're the two that voted on it too.
very well, if that suits you all,
Well, George,
then,
it'd be
please.
point and counterpoint going back.
all right, then, if you two would bring us a proposal at the, do you think the June meeting would be too soon? Or
Well,
would
a
you
place
like
to start, Mr. Chair, is what we put in place as a stopgap with the second application last month. And to make sure that we look at that hard, so we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and
Yeah,
that kind of stuff. Make sure that, will this work on everything as we move forward? Does it get us out of this? And I think Mr. Coombs had some ideas too about how to rope them in a little bit. Start with the most egregious and work backwards. But anyway, we'll take a look at it, and I'll get in touch with you and Tom, depending on how you all are dividing the duties, and sit down and talk about how we fix this, because we are setting ourselves up for a bait and switch. We're lucky we have not gotten one.
all right. Should we look forward to hearing something in June, or would you prefer July, just to make sure you have time to look properly at this?
I'm willing to shoot, but I'm gonna be sympathetic to staff, since they're
Well-
working stopgap, and if they can't find the time to work with us, then I'll be sympathetic to
We'll
them.
look for July, and if we have something in June, we'll be surprised, nicely surprised, and it'll be good.
So, just one point, we are also trying to bring the recommendation from the TOD committee to remove certain parcels and amend the TOD ordinance. So that will be coming to the June meeting, or at least that's the plan, as long as we can advertise and get everything squared away and the adjacent property owners notified. So with that being said, and wearing multiple hats, we'll confirm that June will not be the date that this comes before Planning Commission.
I did not want to press anybody too hard, just
Yes,
looking
sir.
for reality, that's all.
Mr. Chair, I would like to congratulate staff on an excellent-sized package.
Yes. Very good, very good.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I do have one.
Yeah,
I
Mr.
will
Brooks,
say. We've been talking about when we had that 500 and some page packet that we got the week of the hearing, we've been talking about ways we can get information earlier.
yes.
I just realized recently, Tom provided me with a link of the application.
480.
Pardon?
480.
Okay, 480, excuse me.
Around
But, of the Love's application. And I guess my question to staff is, when that application comes in and y'all deem it legitimate and we're ready to rock and roll, that's when y'all get ready to advertise, is that correct? Could
Yes, sir.
y'all provide the link to the planning commission then for anybody that wants it can go to the application?
Yes, we can do
And
that.
that'll give us 2 weeks, at least we got the application, we won't have staff comments until we get 2 more weeks down the road. But if we can get the application, that would be huge.
And you all got the packets out early this time. I appreciate that, too.
You're welcome.
It would also take pressure off y'all of what happened in that particular time we're talking about. As long as we got something to know what's coming 2 weeks in advance, and just provide the link, and it's up to the individual to go to the link and get what he wants out of it. And not have to make paper copies and all of that at that point in time, I wouldn't think.
Commissioner Brooks, if I may, we have the current Love's application, which is about 480 pages, available on our online system. I'm happy to send that link out to everybody this evening. It's common practice when we get an application that we put it online prior to the neighborhood meeting, so that people have a chance to review it before coming to that meeting, and they can ask questions as a result of that packet. What we could do, perhaps going forward, is once we've posted on to our online system, we just email it out to the Planning Commission that, we've received this application. This is the current version. Love's is on its third
Could
version.
change, just
So
FYI.
we'd be happy to add that protocol in and just have staff email out the link once it's loaded in.
That would be great. What do y'all
Any-
think?
Very good.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, thank you.
Does anybody have an update on Commissioner Quarles?
No, I was wondering where he was. I have not heard from him.
Well, he was not here at the last
No,
meeting.
he was not.
Because
I called
His
you all and
cancer-
told you what his problem
I
is.
know, and I talked to him, but that's been like 2 or 3 weeks ago when you called me.
He was gonna call me and he hadn't called, so I don't know
He
what's
told me
going
the
on.
same thing, I'm gonna call you back, but his cancer has spread.
Oh, my goodness, no, I
And
didn't know
he's-
that.
Undergoing a lot of diagnostic work and
Yeah, yeah,
that sort of, all that stuff. And he seemed like he was in a good frame of mind, but that's why he wasn't here last time and why he's not here tonight, I assume.
I had not heard from him last time, and I thought, being in the same business he's in the past, I mean, I know when the units are down, you're gone, and that's the way it is, and I just thought, well, we must have trouble up in, at Millstone or something like
He told me
that.
straightforward that it is spread and
Wow.
they're just trying to figure out
Yeah,
how much and what they
Okay.
can do.
all right,
Is that
thank you.
pretty much what you got?
Yeah, it had pretty much bundled in his growing area,
Yep,
and he didn't know what they were gonna do.
yep. That's what
So
he
he was
told me. He
waiting
was
for-
waiting for some test results to come back and
That's what he
then he'd
said.
have to meet with the oncologist to figure out what his options were. So I didn't know if anybody else had heard anything
No,
more recent, but that's the latest I heard.
well, thank you. I'll make a
Tried to
point
call
of
him
checking.
today,
with
but I
him.
didn't get him. So I don't know, he might be back in the hospital.
Hmm.
That's where he was at the last meeting.
He was.
He was in the
When
hospital.
I talked to him, he was not in the hospital.
Yeah, he was, we're not,
Right.
All right, well, thank you.
You're welcome to.
All right, anything else? Then we're going to adjourn this meeting of the work session, and we'll reconvene at 7 o'clock for the planning commission.
There we go. All right. Good evening, everybody. If you have not already registered online, and even if you had, if you'd like to come down and fill out a card, if you plan on speaking on an item tonight, please come down and do so. We'll call the cards first, and then after the cards are, everybody that's on a card is read, we will then ask anybody from the audience if you'd like to come and speak. And if you are here to speak about Love's Truck Stop tonight, you need to speak during the first public comment period at the very beginning of the meeting. If you are here to speak about the Matrix and items on the Matrix, that'll be a separate public comment period later on in the evening. If you're here to speak about solar, that will also have its own public comment period. If you have questions about that, please let me know.
Sir?
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. I'm here to help. You were going to call it. I appreciate it. Absolutely. Good. I'm glad you're back. Thank you.
Do we need more, Chris?
Thomas, do we have that filled out online?
I think a lot of people miss that.
Just holler and give me a thumbs up.
John, Jeff.
If, you want me to tell them if they filled it out online?
Mr. Davis is going to announce if they filled it out online, but they don't need to fill out another one.
And then all of a sudden you start trying to get it out, and you're just laying it down. And then
Was this the right one?
John, yes.
Should they have a?
How y'all doing?
Doing great, how about yourself?
All right.
Trying to stay awake.
Hopefully it'll be early.
Thanks. Thanks, Tom. They must like you more. They must like you more.
They got the chillers running tonight, don't they?
Feels good right now.
They got the chillers running.
Remember what Holly used to say?
I was thinking I should have worn that Harris tweed jacket instead of the blue summer
That's
sport coat.
You remember that?
They were hanging on the chair in here.
I told him, I said,
To do what?
I told him to turn the heat up. I said, what the hell?
There's no way I'm falling asleep tonight as cool as it is.
Not sitting here just being pretty, although that happens every now and then.
But it'll confuse.
Don't they?
I've got that, I've got that.
Okay.
You can, if we did it that way, if we did it that way, then it didn't work.
Yeah.
So which one do we want here?
In your district?
Yes, okay, Lowe's goes.
Time to go get me a coat.
Well, they'll probably be coming on then. When do the last call? Yeah, yeah, that's fine, yeah. We're good. Good to go with what? Oh, well, that's good to know. All right. All right. Just trying to get everything in the right place here. Right, I'd like to call the May meeting of the Louisa County Planning Commission to order. Ms. Johnson, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Jarvis?
He's
Mr.
here.
Barlow?
Yeah.
Mr. Brooks?
Here?
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Dissensway?
Here.
Mr. Dickerson?
Here.
Mr. Quarles? Mr. Goodwin?
Here?
Mr. Kersey?
Present.
Mr. Purcell?
Here.
All right, thank you. Please stand while we have the invocation led by Commissioner Dickerson, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Goodwin.
Let us pray. Father God, once again we come before you to do the work of Louisa County. We thank you for those who came before us, who established and perpetuated Louisa County. Be with us tonight and help us to make wise decisions and be good stewards of the county's resources. We also ask your healing blessings upon Commissioner Quarles, who's not with us tonight. Bless and protect him and all of us. Be with us tonight as we travel home and allow us all to arrive safely to our destinations. In your most holy name we pray. Amen.
Please stand if you are able. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, you have the agenda before you tonight. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
Motion and second to approve the agenda. Any discussion on the agenda? All in favor of approving, say aye. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Johnson, could we have a roll call vote on approving the agenda?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Dissensway?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Kersey?
Yes.
All right, the agenda is approved. And Ms. Johnson, I would like the record to reflect that Mr. Jarvis is with us.
Yes,
So,
thank you.
good. The minutes for the April meeting appear on packet pages 3 through 6. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the April meeting?
So moved.
And a second? Motion and second to approve the minutes. We do have, do we have any further discussion on the minutes? I have one item, if it's not been noted on packet page 5. This is under the BW Solar application, the last paragraph. The vote was a vote to deny forwarding the recommendation. Therefore, the vote should reflect 6-0 instead of 0-6.
Staff will make the correction.
Very good. Are there any other corrections to be made? Any other discussion? Very good. All those in, I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson, could we have a roll call vote on approving the minutes, please?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Disco?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Kersey?
Yes.
Very good. The minutes from April are approved. Moving on to consent agenda. We don't have a consent agenda tonight, so we can move to the public address period. And there's maybe a little confusion on what we have in the public address period tonight, so I just want to clarify this for everyone in the room. The public address period is a time for the public to speak to the Planning Commission about anything that is not a part of a public hearing tonight. We do have a public hearing that is discussing uses in a matrix table for zoning districts. One of the uses that we're going to consider in that is truck stop. I know there are a number of people who would like to speak about the Love's truck stop. So in order to get everybody in the right hearing and the right comment period, the public address period that we're going to have right now, if you want to speak specifically about Love's truck stop, now's the time to do it, when I open that period. Later, if you want to talk about truck stops in general and whether or not truck stops should be allowed in a certain zoning district, that's the time to talk about that. But that would not be specific necessarily to Love's. That would be for any truck stop. So if you want to talk specifically about Love's truck stop, you should do it in the public address period I'm about to open up. Okay? I just wanted to clarify that. We have a lot of people here tonight. We want to hear from everybody. We just want to get everybody in the right place at the right time. Okay, so again, the public address period is for time for the public to speak to the Planning Commission about anything that concerns them that's not a hearing tonight. I'm going to open the public address period. Anyone who wishes to speak will have 3 minutes to speak. If you're representing an organization, please let me know. That's a different time period. So the public address period is open. I do have some cards that fit the public address period, so I'm going to call those names first. And after we call those names for those people to come up and speak, then I'll open it up to anyone else who wants to speak during the public address period. First name I have is William Todd Hicks, and he'll be followed by, be followed by Nathan Seaborn. So, Mr. Hicks, please come forward. Yes. And again, you'll have 3 minutes. We have the timer running on that. Yeah.
Good.
Good.
Hey everybody, some of you I know, some of them not so well. I do own 2 local businesses in the area. I employ over a dozen locals, heritage and the community. You know, it's Jefferson District is a beautiful place to be. And I really didn't want to speak negative on Love's. I just wanted to say I don't feel our district is the place for it. I think I can speak for myself and a lot of the community and know that we approve of growth in the area, support businesses, but I just don't feel this is the right growth for our area or the right business for this location. And I think that's all the time I need.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Next up is Nathan Seaborn, to be followed by John Thomas.
Mr. Chair, if you could ask them to
Oh.
give their name and voting district.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Yes, please, when you come up, would you state your name and your voting district? I apologize, I missed that.
Nathan Seaborn, Jefferson District. Live in Gum Spring for, I guess it's 15 years now. I've started a construction company, live right there, and my kids go to school in Salem Christian School on 3 Chop. And I would say I'm against a Love's Truck Stop coming into that community there. I just don't see it benefiting the county and the community right there. I'm all for growth, but I think it's not the right growth for where we're at. So I like doing business in Louisa. I like to keep my business in Louisa, but that's all I have to say. So I'm against it. So thank you guys for being here tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Seaborn. Next up is John Thomas, followed by Caitlin Barger.
Ready?
Yes.
John Thomas, Mountain District. A couple people here might know me. I go by a nickname Jet, but I live in the Mountain District, right off the 522, right up the road from Mr. Barlow. And I will tell you, from my occupation is insurance claims business. I've been in it for 39 years. I've handled truck wrecks, whether it be in truck stops, I've had them on the highway, et cetera. And I'm here to speak against it. I don't think that we need this kind of business, and I'm going to say in Louisa, period, but in general, we don't need it there at that interchange because the road system is not designed to accommodate those tractor trailers. If you get one that's going to get on the interstate and go west, it's going to jam up that whole bridge. Now we've got all the residents in our community that are going to be stopped with traffic. We have accidents that are going to occur because people, as we know today, aren't paying attention. They're playing with their phones or whatnot. And what it's going to bring, I'm sure each one of you have traveled, you've stopped at a truck stop, and you've looked around at the environment that you're in, or hopefully you have stopped at a truck stop or travel center. You see the environment that you're in, you see what it brings. If any of you have any doubt, I would encourage you to just ride over here to New Kent County or ride on down to Skippers, Virginia, or some of these other areas where there are some Love's truck stops. We all know what it's going to bring. And I'm not speaking of necessarily the trucks themselves, but it's a center for sex trafficking. It's a center for prostitution, and just you're going to have to put a substation down there for the police department or the sheriff's department to be able to take care of those problems and issues that it's going to bring with it, all hours of the day and night. I will tell you, I believe I heard the folks at Love's tell us that they were expecting to service between 300 and 500 trucks a day. It was some small number, but yet they've asked you all in DOT for approval for up to 3,000 a day. Well, they're not going to spend $22 million. I mean, you're all smart people. They're not spending $22 million to service 500 trucks or less a day. You got to make so much money in order to pay that note. So I'd like to encourage all of you to please, when it comes up, and we're going to talk about the metrics or matrix later, but it comes up, it's not what we would like to see. As my wife, a lifelong resident in Louisa County, 2 miles from where we live now, it's not what the people that live here want to see. And we hope that you all will consider what the people that live here, that's going to be in their backyard, do want and don't want, and understand that you're representing them. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. All right. All right. Next up is Caitlin Barger. And is Ms. Barger not speaking at this time, did she say? Okay. All right. Next up then is Elaine Taylor.
Thank you all. I was able to watch the work session ahead of time, so I appreciate the dialogue that's gone into this and the consideration. I want to throw in sort of a different twist. I live in the Mountain Road District, Mr. Barlow's. My concern is twofold. One, I traveled 522 up to the museum in Louisa. A lot of you know I was up there until I retired. And I stopped using 522 after some scary close calls, and some of them were with trucks. And I took the old mountain road. It took me 5 minutes longer, and I got there very happily. I really have concerns about you putting the number of trucks that we know are coming. They want 522 because it is a cutoff coming out of Culpeper. We'll have more truck traffic on that road. We'll have fatalities. We have school buses on that 2-lane road, and there is no shoulder. My larger concern is what you're doing to Gum Spring. And I'm hoping, as you look at your zoning grid, that you'll postpone that until you have a chance to redo the comprehensive plan. That's the gateway community coming out of Richmond. If you shop in Short Pump, like a lot of us down there do, what they're building down there are town centers. They put brick pavers in going into the Whole Foods. Why? Because people want a sense of history, they want a sense of belonging, they want a sense of community where they can walk to stores, etc. If you want to draw young professionals to purchase housing on those big tracts of land, and there are a couple, I don't need to name them, but there are some very large ones down there that soon will be coming up for sale to be divided. They can go in small homes with a lot of younger children you're going to have to put through school, or they can be some young professionals who come in. That community is such a jewel. Hills Ordinary that was there when they took it apart, post and ground, they dated it to probably 1700. You have Providence Church that was built in 1750. You have churches, stores, a community. Why it's small now is 3 Chopped Road was replaced by 250 that was then replaced by the interstate. So a lot of the businesses have closed, but not the community and not the people. There are some wonderful places down in Goochland because I live down there, I go. The little cafe, the Courthouse Cafe, they're not even open for dinner, but they have a huge clientele that gathers there, 10 tables max. You could do some wonderful things at that first community that you come into to get into Louisa. My time is up, but I hate to see you throw it away on a truck stop and a Family Dollar. So that's my plea. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. All right, do we have anyone who has not signed up for Loves or for any other topic that is not a part of the public hearings tonight that wishes to speak? You'll have to come forward, please. And again, state your name and you.
I didn't get this turned in.
Chris will take it. Just state your name and your voting district, please.
I'm Gina Newcomb. I'm the Jackson district. And we had a very informative public meeting at the Methodist Church down in Gum Springs. A lot of you didn't know about. And when we left there, we wanted Loves to know we love our truckers. They bring us lots of goods. But Gum Springs does not love Loves. We don't want the crime rate to go up, which when you look at the statistics, it does. Sex trafficking, light pollution, we went over all of these things in detail. Air pollution, noise pollution, the crime rate, theft, drugs, transit, sex trafficking, hotel, Loves It even said doing a hotel, and we all know that that will most likely, and maybe I shouldn't say that, be rented by the hour. We don't favor that. The bridge, as Mr. Thomas quite eloquently addressed, we addressed that issue too, that there was some misinformation about the load, the truckload of how many trucks would be coming. And then there's just that 2-lane bridge. And we went through all of the length of the trucks and the trailers and how that would be backed up, and with lights changing, it would not relieve that. Or another roundabout. And is there someone representing Loves here tonight?
Ma'am, direct your comments to us,
Oh, okay,
please.
okay,
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And I'm almost up. Just to say that we don't want Loves. We don't want them. We don't want them. We don't want to be a bad neighbor. We're about little houses, the tiny houses, what I saw on this, and I'm not sure what all of this is about, so I plead my ignorance on that, okay? But thank you all, and I know you have a difficult job, but I hope the people's voice will be listened to on this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, does anybody else wish to speak? Please come forward. And again, state your name and your voting district.
Good evening, board members. My name is James Newfer, Mountain Road District, represented by Mr. Barlow. Thank you for your time, and I apologize. I think I registered to speak on the other issue tonight and didn't realize they were separate. I live at 301 Deerwood Drive, Gum Spring. I want to thank everyone on the board for your service and dedication to Louisa County and everything that you've done in the past. My wife Sherry and I have lived here for nearly 20 years, and we've never spoken at one of these meetings. And to be honest, we've never felt the need to, because you all have done such a great job, and we didn't, why get in your way? You know, just let you all do what you do and get home earlier to your folks rather than listen to me ramble on. But recently I spoke with county staff, and they said, hey, people aren't coming to these meetings. And I looked and saw that believe last month no one spoke. So I felt like this is the time to become involved and share our opinions respectfully and politely with you all. I do stand in firm opposition to the Loves Travel Center. When the land was originally zoned and the comprehensive plan was put together, clearly the size of the lots and the amount of land that was zoned for the construction and the by right of construction, and I apologize for the lack of proper vocabulary. I'm a math teacher and this is all new to me. But you know, there was a lot of thought, I'm sure, put into the size of the developments for the commercial development. And clearly this particular development is going to exceed that. And so what I would ask the board to do is consider your comprehensive plan. And where I teach, we have a saying, the plan works, stick to the plan works. And this plan, you know, clearly needs a change to the plan to allow them to continue with their zoning. And I could go on all night long about, you know, worries about accidents. I have a 13-year-old that'll be driving when that truck stop is active, and I'm terrified about getting a phone call at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night of an accident, those types of things. I grew up at the Buckhorn Travel Plaza off of Interstate 80 in Pennsylvania, and I had numerous accidents I never told my parents, near accidents I never told my parents about. Just not looking forward to that here. I hope that you'll consider the existing zoning as it is, leave it as it is, and then Loves, they can either build on what they have available to them or choose a different location. And thank you for your time on this.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Again, not just for Loves, but this is the public address period. So would anyone else like to address or speak to the Planning Commission about anything that is not a public hearing tonight? All right, very well. Hearing none, I'm going to close the public address period, and we can move on. I will make one comment, just so you all understand. The Planning Commission is not considering whether or not to deal with Love's Truck Stop tonight. We're not talking about that at all. So that's not on the agenda, in case that might have been misunderstood. Next item is unfinished business, and I believe we had from the work session that the small area plans, gateway plans, transportation plans are going to get back in gear and will be coming back to us in the next month or so. Plus, we're going to have now as new unfinished business, actually it's new business, the discussion or a work group has been set up to talk about the dealing with, Mr. Goodwin.
Proffers.
Proffers, essentially, proffers, yes, on rezoning actions. That's what I was trying to get to. Very good. So we can move on now to the public hearings. First public hearing up is LDR 2024-02.
Mr. Chair, I
Mr.
would
Goodwin?
like to remind you that if we're going to get these small area gateway transportation plan back to you in a matter of months, it depends on the commissioners working in their areas.
Well, it does, yes.
Because
Yes.
I'm not involved in that. I'm willing to if you want help. But the way it was set up at our last meeting, I believe, each commissioner would work in their area to come up with some parameters for gateways.
Yes, yes, that's recognized. Just recognizing that we were getting this going again, and it would be a few months to get something back. All right, so we move on to public hearings. First one, LDR 2024-02, utility scale solar generation land area. Mr. Coombs.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. This is a recommendation that came from the Board of Supervisors Solar Committee. They had requested that the Planning Commission consider dropping the cap of total acreage from 3% to 2%. I will say one item that I have to correct or change with this is right now we have in the ordinance that the amount would be 6,534 acres if we drop to 2%. However, we had staff look at it, Matthias with GIS, and based on the total acreage of the county, we have 324,418 acres. And then if you subtract out the acreage that is the lake, that is 7,260 acres. So what would happen is that means it's 317,158 acres. And then if you take 2% of that, it would drop it from 6534, it would be 6343. Right now, based on the approved acreage, it's 5,211 acres and some change, with 3 projects currently in the CUP process totaling 611.574 acres. That means for CUP and approved, we have a total acreage of 5,823 acres, 0.308. So if we drop to 2%, we would still have enough space for potentially 1 or 2 more projects. Stand ready to answer any questions.
Any questions for the staff at this time? Very well, then we're going to go to public hearing on this. I'm going to open the public hearing period. Public hearing is open. I have 1 card for comment on this right now. Again, same rules apply. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please let me know if you represent an organization. There's a different time frame for that. And state your name and voting district when you come up. First speaker is Dudley Delbridge.
I'm Dudley Delbridge, and we live in the Jackson District. And I am the local liaison for Invenergy. Invenergy has been working in Louisa County since 2019. Invenergy has worked diligently to fully comply with the solar requirements as amended in August of 2022, and has been preparing to formally propose a quality project that will bring benefits to the community. As you know, the amendment of the solar ordinance requires a 300-foot setback. Policies like this add to the project's footprint and acreage. By further restricting the solar cap, it risks years of investment and prevents landowners from using their land as they see fit. Louisa County has not yet seen the additional funds that projects like ours can bring. The current solar ordinance requires developers to negotiate a siting agreement which would establish a substantial dollar amount to be available to Louisa County. We ask that proposed solar projects are evaluated on their own merits. Invenergy has been working closely with landowners, following solar hearings, and taking the time to propose a project that would protect and preserve landowners' property, bring significant benefits to our community, and millions of dollars to Louisa County. Every project, renewable or not, should have the opportunity to come before the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. Currently, the Board of Supervisors has the authority to approve or deny a project. The lowering of the cap does nothing to strengthen the authority that the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors already have, and could inadvertently push projects to be rushed through the designs and setback process to race to fit under the cap. It is in the county's best interest to have well-planned, thoughtfully cited applications presented. Lastly, I have been meeting with local stakeholders to identify community needs. Invenergy is interested in identifying community needs and finding additional ways to bring benefits to us. They have shown good faith in their commitment to develop responsibly by complying with requirements set forth in ordinances, ensure local representatives understand the benefit of solar, and be good stewards to the land. I hope that this body will choose not to lower the solar cap and continue to provide the authority to accept or reject projects on their own merits and the experience of the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Delbridge. Would anyone else like to speak on this topic? Yes, please come forward. State your name and your voting district.
Happily. Good evening. My name's Skylar Zunk. I'm not from here, but speaking on behalf of an organization called Energy Right, a nonprofit that works all across the state to help ensure clean energy is developed the right way. And a big part of that is making sure we get the proper ordinances in place and the local level. We work in most Virginia counties, and it's been a privilege to work with members of the Louisa community and your county staff on getting their recommendations for ordinances, not just here, but in other places. You could ask Mr. Edelin, the Louisa County ordinance that is in place now is a model that many other counties all across Virginia look at, and they certainly respect the fact that Louisa County has learned from mistakes on early projects and want to ensure the projects built in the future are to the highest standards possible. I'm also chair of the Virginia Solar Energy Development and Energy Storage Authority. We're working on these issues and talking to county stakeholders to decide the best pathway forward for solar development in Virginia. I'd encourage you all not to reduce the cap from 3% down to 2%. As you know, the legislature's been looking at this very heavily over the past 6 or so months. There were 2 pieces of legislation this past legislative session that would have tinkered with local control on projects. As a conservative organization, we do not ever want to see local control of siting and zoning decisions taken away from localities. This is the room where these decisions should be made. One of the proposals was to set a mandatory 4% cap for every Virginia locality, removing local government's authority to decide the shape, size, location of projects until a county's put 4% of its land in solar. Louisa's done a lot. I think Louisa certainly can entertain proposals from landowners in the future on potential projects that will be invisible, that can be good taxpayers, help drive economic growth in the community without increasing a demand for county services, more kids in schools, et cetera, et cetera. I want Louisa County to continue to be a model for other localities. We see counties all across the state working to ban solar, to restrict solar. We're on a pathway for the state to have to act in some form or fashion in the future. Solar is affordable. It's the cheapest way to put a new electron on the grid, and these projects can be low impact if we continue to judge them on their merits, have thoughtful ordinances, and ask these projects to be the best possible neighbors that they can be. Again, my name is Skylar Zunk. Our organization is called Energy Right. It would be a privilege to chat with any of you all individually. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Zuck. Would anyone else like to speak on this? Please come forward, state your name and your voting district, please.
My name's Christopher Moses. I'm in the Green Springs district, and I am against lowering the cap. As the gentleman said, the cap gives you guys flexibility, or with or without the cap, you guys have the flexibility to say yay or nay to any of these projects. As a landowner, it's my right to do what I need to do with my land. If it's not going to be solar, or if I don't have the option for solar, I'm going to look for other development. and all the development opportunities, which doesn't have the tax base to use you guys, doesn't have the benefits to the county, would actually cost more to the county if I decide to go development. For the people that are opposed to it, have they thought about the number of cars that are going to be on that land if I put houses in on my property? Just consider it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on this topic? All right, seeing no other, oh, I'm sorry, come forward.
Good evening. My name is John Alexander. I live on West Street in the town of Louisa, and I've been here about 14 years, and I lived here for about 3 years in middle school. Lived in Fluvanna and also lived in Albemarle County. I just would like you all to consider primarily what these types of projects bring to the community. One of the reasons I moved over here was to the community atmosphere, as well as the schools and the different programs that are provided by some of these types of developments and the tax dollars that they bring. They're relatively quiet. They don't demand a lot of services. And I just think that you all should consider keeping the limit where it is, because I think it does give you flexibility, and I think that there is proof in the pudding, because a lot of my conversations with my friends in Charlottesville are like, Louisa really does have their eye on the ball, and they're able to, put those tax dollars to work in places that they make a difference. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else like to speak on this topic? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the public address portion and bring this back to the commission.
Does staff get a chance to follow up on anything?
There was nothing to follow up on because it's brought by the staff, so. Yes. Do we have any other comments from commissioners?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Brooks?
I support the existing ordinance that's in place for 3%. I feel like it's a good requirement. The safeguards in there to protect the landowner, the adjoining landowners. I don't understand the reduction of 3% to 2% on a good ordinance that hasn't been tried yet. So I'm not in support of reducing from 3 to 2.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other commissioner? And since this is not associated with any particular district, the chair is looking for a motion from the commission on this action.
I motion, Mr. Chair,
Mr. Brooks?
to not reduce from 3% to 2%.
So we have a motion and a second to, let me get the phrasing right on this on the public hearing.
Motion to deny.
Yeah, it's a motion to deny the request to reduce from 3% to 2%. We have a second, a motion and a second on that. Do we have any further discussion? Then,
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Goodwin.
I would like to ask if staff can enlighten us as to some of the thinking that went into this proposed change by the subcommittee of the Board of Supervisors, if you can. Where did this originate? What's the thought process that they put into it? Is there something we're not aware of?
My understanding is that we've enacted those new rules that we spoke about earlier. We've had 3 projects go through you all and have yet to go to the Board of Supervisors. One has gone through and it ended up getting denied from the Board of Supervisors. I think the supervisors hear from the residents who live in and around some of these proposals that this is not something that they are interested in for the future of the county. So those are some of the items that I know have been occurring, but I can't speak to the exact reason they chose this recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Coons. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, any other discussion before we take the vote? Then, Ms. Johnson, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Tissisway?
No.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
No.
Mr. Kersey?
No.
So that's a 3-3 vote? Yes. So I believe that fails. So the motion fails. Do we have another motion on the floor? Actually, I'm not sure another motion would come to think of it. Just a brief legal question then. So at this point, we would send this to the Board of Supervisors without a recommendation in either direction.
Reflecting a tie vote.
Reflecting a tie vote, yeah. Just to verify that. All right, then that's where we are. All right, so then we move on to LDR 2024-03 zoning districts. Mr. Coons.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. So before you today, we have 13 items that are defined in the zoning code. These 13 items are actually not addressed in the matrix, nor are they addressed in any zoning district as a permitted use or permitted uses with a conditional use permit. So this is an exercise in trying to administratively clean up some of these items that have definitions and are not addressed in the matrix or any zoning code. And I'll stand ready to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for staff at this time? Very well, then I'm going to open the public address or public comment period on this. Public comment period is open, and again, let me just clarify that this is public comments on these uses and their application to what zoning districts would be appropriate, and this is generic. This does not apply to any particular project. This is for any project. So this is not an appropriate time to talk about a particular project. This is an appropriate time to talk about any of these uses where they would properly apply in a zoning district for any project that would come forward. Just wanted to clarify that. Now, with that in mind, would anybody like to speak on this proposal? Please come forward. State your name and your voting district.
Good evening again, board members. James Newford, Mountain Road District. I'll admit that I was really not sure what this was, but when I read some of the verbiage, it elicited some very strong emotions. And so I just, as I'm beginning to understand and talking to some folks and see where you're at as a board, I think I've got this under control now. So the proposed changes, the topics that you want to put in the land use matrix, I think that's the correct way of saying it, I hope.
Yes.
The information on the website, as I was reading, was unclear, so I feel better about that now. As you consider these, I'd like you to know that I stand firmly against any changes that would allow the development by right, and again, I hope my verbiage is correct here, for any junkyards, impound lots, adult motion picture theaters, truck stops, or adult viewing booths. These are types of developments that I would if you want to take action on them, I think there's an X or something that says prohibited. Would love to see that go across the matrix for these particular items, if you choose to do that. However, if you choose not to, I would ask that you handle it in a way that would require these types of developments to go through the hearing process, where residents like myself could stand up and give you all a hard time about allowing developers to develop these types of issues and to have them go through public process. I would really be disheartened if you made changes so that when I drive home and I go past Griff's Antique at the corner of 250 and 522, that there's 3 giant X's there, and I have to explain to my son what that business is and why he's not allowed to go in there. So as you handle this, I ask that you handle it with sensitivity, thinking about the families, the children, our school systems, and what we want our county to actually look like. Some of these are concerning topics for me. I hope you'll handle them appropriately, and I do trust your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to speak on this topic? Yes, please come forward, state your name and voting district.
Hello, my name is Amanda Goyer. I'm not a resident of Louisa. I live in Goochland County in Gum Spring. I grew up here and then moved away for my husband's job, and then recently just moved back to Gum Spring with my 2-year-old daughter, and we're expecting a second. I would be disappointed, to say the least, if any of these things showed up on a main, 250, 522, anywhere where there's children. The only thing I keep thinking of is my daughter and how I loved growing up here in a small town. And, it would be, if I want to see these things, I graduated from VCU. I can go down to downtown Richmond and see these things if I'm interested. But I didn't move to the county. My parents didn't move me to the county for better schools, better living, to have these things here. I am firmly opposed specifically to automobile graveyard, movie motion picture for adults, tiny houses, truck stops, and video viewing booths or arcade booths for adults. I think it's unnecessary for the area that we live in, and I think it would not be smart for the county now or in the future, and thinking of the next generation, I don't think it would be appreciated by them either. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak on this topic? Very well. Seeing no other, I'm going to close public comment period. Public comment period is closed, and bring it back to the commission here for discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Goodwin.
I think it's important that we clarify that, because a lot of these land uses that have been stated tonight are not in the matrix now. They are in effect not allowed unless they go through a special exception process.
Yes.
So if we do not vote on some of the other uses that were mentioned tonight, we are not allowing them. They are disallowed now. And I just think that based on the comments that people should know that. That having been said, and recalling the work session and the one item that is in front of us, and respecting the one lady, I think maybe it was a gentleman, said that he would like to see this fight be public. To paraphrase your words, that they should have to come in. I would like for us to consider 4 truck stops, X's across the board, with the exception of C1 in a growth area overlay district and C2 in a growth area overlay district. Those 2 would be marked CUP and would have a public hearing.
And let me ask you one question, Commissioner Goodwin, about that. Do you feel like C1 is a correct use for that, considering the description of what C1 in Growth Area Overlay District is on page 3 of the intent statements for each of the zoning districts? And I point out that C1 is primary purpose of light commercial district, to establish and protect limited business districts serving surrounding residential districts, traffic and parking well controlled to protect and preserve property values in surrounding residential districts insofar as possible neighborhood business development shall take place in limited business district. Do you feel like that might be maybe a lighter density of use than a truck stop might?
I'm looking for,
Page 3.
well, I know
Oh,
that.
I'm sorry, yes.
The definition, I guess that was in the, if it is the commission's desire, I can back that off to a C2 based on the definition of truck stop that I'm looking at.
I can support that, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, in the definition, Mr. Chair, it's because there's wording in it, it may include but not limited to, and
Right.
that's not exact, and I don't want us to get caught up slicing it too fine as long as we've got words like that in there. But if it's the commission's desire, I'd gladly take that as a friendly amendment.
Very well. Are there any other comments on that?
I support just a conditional use permit requirement in C2 in the growth area overlay district.
Very well.
And the question, Mr. Chairman, we had talked about, we just gonna take action on the one item and not the other
Yes,
two
and
or three items?
I was going to make that
Okay.
clarification. I'll
Okay.
go ahead and make that now, that during the work session, the commission looked at all of these uses and determined that in general, what the commission would like to do is go back through the update of the comprehensive plan process to review all of these through that lens. However, because of things that are going on right now with applications, it was important to review the truck stop or the truck stop use now and make a determination on that. Again, if that were to be X'd out across the board, then that could be brought to the Board of Supervisors as a special exception, and under a special exception, all of the review that the Planning Commission does towards reviewing proffers, making recommendations, determining what controls and limitations should be placed, would not exist. So by making or by properly determining what zoning classification a truck stop would go into, then any truck stop application that would come would have to come through the Planning Commission and would have to come through with the proper site plan, the proper information that we could then review, and we could make recommendations and changes and adjustments that are necessary to get a proper application. Therefore, instead of by right, a conditional use permit in that particular zoning district is the right way to do business. This provides the greatest protection for any application that would come in for the residents of the area. And again, this does not approve or disapprove any application. What this does is allow the Planning Commission to be involved in the process of reviewing applications to to get to the best result for the applicants and for the community. So I just wanted to make that clarification. So tonight, we are going to take up truck stop. It is the only one of these uses we're going to take up. The rest will go through the comprehensive plan process. So with that, if there are no other comments, then the chair would look for, again, since this doesn't exist in anybody's district, the chair would look for a recommendation.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Goodwin.
regarding LDR 2024-03 zoning districts, uses and use matrix, I make a motion that we make a single change. Actually, it's a line change. It will be X's all the way across, with the exception of the part of the grid that refers to C2 Growth Area Overlay District. And we make that a conditional use permit so that both the public and the applicant can have their day in court, so to speak.
And just to clarify, that would be for truck stop?
That is correct.
And as part of your recommendation, then you're also, as part of your motion, you're also recommending that all other defined uses be put in the review process for the update to the condition, to the comprehensive plan.
No other changes to the matrix at this time.
Yes, but to take
Yes.
them up as part of.
Yes.
Before we have a second on that, Mr. Coons?
I would just ask that we also include, if it's being included in the matrix in that fashion, we include section 86-431, which is the general commercial C2 in a growth area for the conditional use permit. So we would just add it in the matrix in that corresponding code section.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, correct. It has to go under that code section, it has to be added.
Okay.
Yes. Do we have a second on the motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Johnson, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Dissisway?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Percy?
No.
The motion carries. And that concludes that item. So we'll move on to new business, and I included new business and old business, so we don't have any other new business. I don't believe we have any discussion items right now, so Mr. Coons, do you have a report of any kind for us?
I do not, but I stand ready to answer any questions. And we hope that Josh Gillespie has enjoyed his first week of work in Goochland.
I understand he was traveling all week, so I don't even think he got to spend his first week working in Goochland.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Goodwin?
can you give us any update on the hiring process for Mr. Gillespie's, or is that too sensitive this time, too raw?
We have received some applications, but we've yet to narrow down the list of applicants for interview or offering a position.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very well. I have no further announcements. Then, in that case, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
And a second. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out tonight.
Yes.
on my face.
I'm going to talk to you. You better look at Merle. I don't know if I got the